So I have been doing print and cut with my Cricut machine for years, and today, for the very first time, I am getting the print and cut error that you can see here on my screen. And so I am actually going to troubleshoot this print and cut process with this video so that I can show you guys how to troubleshoot it yourselves in case you get yourself into the same situation. My machine has attempted to read my registration marks. It started with the upper left-hand corner and it's not working. Now, my guess is because this is ultra glossy sticker paper, so my guess would be that the censor is having trouble reading the glossy paper. So I'm gonna try the first suggestion that I saw online, which is to remove the mat from my machine. And then I'm gonna color over the registration marks using just a white Crayola crayon. And I believe that's just gonna put a little wax over the area so that the Cricut machine can see the registration marks a little bit better. So we're gonna try this and see if it works. Okay, so with the white crayon, my machine got a little bit further. It was able to read this registration mark, which is the first one that it looks at. But when it got to this registration mark, I still got that same error message. So the next hack that I'm gonna try is using some matte scotch tape. And I'm gonna put that over top the registration marks on all four corners and see if that helps my Cricut machine read the registration marks. Okay, so I have tape over all of my registration marks and I tried to make sure it was far enough away from all my designs that it shouldn't have to cut through the tape when it cuts the offset around my stickers, hopefully. This is attempt number 2, so let's see if this works any better. Okay, folks, well, we didn't even get past the first registration mark and we got our first error already. So what I'm gonna try to do now is I'm gonna turn off the studio lights. I have 2 lights on either side of my camera because I'm filming a video, and I've heard that excessive light around glossy paper can make it tough for the censor to read the registration marks. So for try number 3, I'm gonna try turning the lights down a little bit so that the censor can hopefully read the paper better. All right. And after attempt number 3, it still didn't get past the first registration mark, so that didn't really do anything. Now I'm gonna remove my mat from my machine. And I'm gonna have to do some research on what to try next. So stay tuned for my next attempt of print and cut. So the fourth thing that I'm going to try to get my print and cut to work on glossy paper with my Explorer Air 2 is to switch to the beta version of Cricut Design Space. So currently I'm in the live version, which means that everybody has this version available to them. Today is June 13th, 2023, and I am on version 7.35 5.138. You can always find that by looking at the top left-hand corner of your screen. And that's important to note because depending on when you see this video, we may be in a totally different version of Cricut Design Space. Let me show you how to switch over to that. So first I'm going to go up to cancel, or I guess down to cancel my cut, and then select yes. Then I'm going to cancel it once again and head back into my canvas. So I originally clicked make it because I had shut Design Space down and restarted my computer, and then I just went straight to make it. So in order to go back to my canvas with this project, I'm going to click on customize. But something important to note is typically when you switch from the live version of Design Space to beta, is that typically you're going to have to restart Design Space. So make absolute certain that you've already saved your project exactly the way that it is. I am going to go ahead and click on the star, and over here in the layers panel, click on the eyeball to hide it because I already know what cut setting I want to use, so I'm not concerned about that. I'm going to save it once more. That way I'm all ready to go in case Design Space has to shut down. So to switch between versions of Design Space, I'm going to go up to the hamburger menu, which is these three little lines in the upper left-hand corner. And I'm going to go down to settings. And once I'm in settings under general, you'll see for application experience, I am checked on live because that's the version that I'm in already. So I'm going to go ahead and click on beta. And it says that changing the settings may restart your application, so please make sure you've saved your work before continuing. But I've already done that, so I'm going to go ahead and click the green done button, and we're going to see if Design Space needs to make an update. Sometimes it does when switching between versions, and then hopefully it should open right up for us. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and attempt to open up our last project. So I'm going to click on My Stuff, which you can either access here on the left-hand toolbar or up at the top of Design Space currently. And then I'm going to click on the project I was working on, which is Perfect Match Stickers. And since I don't need to make any more changes, I'm going to go ahead and click the green Make It button. And the one thing that we want to double check here, I haven't had problems with this yet, but we do want to make note of this, is that the page needs to be arranged in the exact same way that it was before, because otherwise it's possible that the page that you printed could be different from this preview, and then you'll end up really messing up your machine. So just double check that if you have a bunch of stickers like I do, these are all individual shapes, that everything is in the same order that it was before. And in this case, it looks like it is, so this should be fine. Now I'll go ahead and click on continue, and oh, whoops, I've got it set to my maker 3. So I need to go ahead and cancel again. And then we'll go ahead and click on customize so that I can open up the canvas version of my project. And I need to switch in my drop-down menu from maker 3 to Cricut Explorer family because I have my Cricut Explorer Air 2 connected. So then we'll click the green Make It button, double check that everything looks the same, and it does. So we'll click on continue. And then I already have my piece of paper printed, so I'm going to click on the green I've already printed link, and then we can choose our cut setting. So for the ultra glossy Nito sticker paper, which is what I'm printing on today, I typically like to use the premium vinyl setting or just the regular vinyl setting if you have an Air 2 and you're using the dial, but I like to change the pressure from default to less. So I'm going to go ahead and hop over to my Cricut machine and see if this allows us to cut. So now that we're all set to go in the beta version of Cricut Design Space, I'm going to go ahead and try and print then cut this sheet again. But I do want to go ahead and note that I'm using the exact same sheet as I was before. So what I've already done to this sheet is colored it with crayon and then covered the registration marks with scotch tape. So hopefully this doesn't mess us up any more than it already is, but I just want to make sure you guys know that as we go through this process, that's kind of where I'm starting. I also don't have any overhead lights on in my room. I have a couple of lamps on, but most of the light is just coming from the window. So it's just basic natural light. There's not an excessive amount of light in here because I don't want to overwhelm my sensor. So now I'll go ahead and open my machine and insert my mat and hope and pray that this works. Then I'll go ahead and click Make It. Okay, so as you can see, we are getting the print and cut error once again because we still have not cut out our stickers. But one pattern I'm starting to notice is that this is the very first registration mark that it starts with in the upper left-hand corner. Anytime that it spends an excessive amount of time in this corner, I can already tell that I'm gonna get that print then cut error. So that's just an observation that I've made throughout this process. If you have a certain spot that your Cricut is spending a lot of time, you know that a lot of times that's where the trouble spot is going to be. I'm going to remove the mat from my machine, and we're gonna give our next attempt a try. So like you, as I'm figuring this out, and I have no idea what to do, I went to YouTube and started looking up some different approaches that people have taken over the years with this error. And one thing that somebody suggested is actually cleaning off the censor of the Cricut Explore Air 2. So I think that's what I'm gonna try next. So it's gonna be a little bit tricky for me to show you how I'm going to do that. But essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to be cleaning the bottom of the censor, which is this area right here. So underneath that is where we see the light that is reading the print then cut pages. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a watercolor brush with just a little bit of water in it, and I'm gonna try to clean that off because it's possible that my censor is dusty. I've had this machine for a while and it's just been sitting out uncovered other than with the machine closed up, but it hasn't been covered, so it's possible that my censor is just dirty. So give me just a moment, stay tuned for that, and I'll show you how I'm gonna clean that censor. And that's our fifth thing that we're gonna try. Okay, so for those of you who are not familiar with watercolor brushes, I'll show you what this looks like in just a second. But basically it's a little brush where you can add a little bit of water into it by inserting it here. And then I'm gonna twist the cap onto here. And then what I'm able to do is I can squeeze this brush and add a little bit of water into this tip if necessary to try and clear anything off of my censor. Now, if you don't have a watercolor brush, I assume that a wet paintbrush would probably do the same thing. Barely wet paintbrush. You wouldn't wanna get it soaking wet or anything because of course this is an electronic, so we do not want to suggest to use a bunch of water. Another thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and turn my machine off for now because I don't wanna have any water around it while the machine is on. I'm also probably gonna go ahead and unplug the power cord here in the back just to make sure that we are being as safe as possible. And again, you always wanna do this with caution, right? You wanna be super, super careful about how you do it because we don't even know if this is gonna work. And we just wanna be really, really cautious. So I'm gonna go ahead and squeeze my brush here just a little. So that my the tip of my paintbrush is just barely wet. Something else you may want to keep in mind is that you may want to wait to try something like this with water until your machine is out of warranty because you don't want to avoid your warranty by trying to figure this out. If you have a brand new Cricut machine and you're struggling with print then cut, then I would suggest contacting Cricut customer service because I have found sometimes that some users have problems right off the bat. The machines just need to be like exchanged because there's something wrong with them. I've had this machine for quite a while, so that's not the case with this machine. So I'm gonna attempt to show you where I'm gonna clean. So let me zoom in a little bit here. Like I said, the sensor is underneath this area right here. So what I'm gonna attempt to do is just very gently take my watercolor brush and kind of brush it underneath that. And I'm really not even sure that I'm getting up underneath it. But I'm gonna do my very best and see if we can reach it. So now I'm gonna set this aside to dry for a couple of minutes. I'm not going to immediately attempt to put anything back in the machine because again, this is electronic, so we always wanna be cautious with using electronics around water. Then I'll try it again in a few minutes and see if this helps. I also may go ahead and print a brand new sheet of sticker paper because at this point, now that I've done quite a few things to my sheet, I'm not sure if those other things that I've done are helping or hurting at this point. So before we start our next round of attempts, I'll let you know where the sheet's at if I found anything that works. Okay guys, so before I attempt to print another glossy sheet of paper, I want to rule out that the issue really is the glossy paper and it's not print and cut in general with this machine, because right before this project, I did calibrate this machine, so it should be ready to go, but I just want to confirm that it should work fine with the glossy, and then we'll know that the matte sticker paper is the problem, not print and cut in general. I'm going to go ahead and I've already printed out the exact same sheet on my matte sticker paper. The quality obviously wasn't turned up as high because the colors are way more muted, but that's okay because this is just a test. So I'm gonna go ahead and flip over the matte sticker paper the glossy sticker paper on the matte and peel it off like this so we don't wrinkle up the sheet. And then we're gonna place our matte sticker paper up here in the upper left-hand corner, just like we would with any other print and cut project. I need to go back to Cricut Design Space and choose a cut setting. So I'm gonna be using one of the sticker paper cut settings in Cricut Design Space. Then I'll be ready to test this out. I decided to just use the regular printable sticker paper cut setting, and then in parentheses it said white because the other option was clear, and obviously this isn't clear. So I'll go ahead and insert the matte into the machine. And let's see if print and cut works from this. Also keep in mind that I am still in the beta version of Cricut Design Space. We can always switch back to the live version if that becomes an issue. Okay, so it immediately moved past this first registration mark. You can already see that that's a good sign. So it's kind of doing more scanning than I'm used to, but the print and cut process has recently changed. So it's definitely possible that I'm just not familiar with this new way. And we are starting to cut, so that's a really, really good sign. That means we can probably narrow down the fact that the problem that we are having with this print and cut is definitely the fact that the paper is glossy. Print and cut should work fine otherwise on this machine. Okay, so we'll go ahead and remove the matte from this machine, and we can see, hopefully, that our stickers peel up nicely. And it looks like this was a little too thick, so it cut all the way through the sticker paper, but that's okay because this was more for testing purposes than it was for the actual project. So now I'm down to the last thing that I know to try. This is the last thing that I saw on YouTube that I feel like I can do, and if this works, I'll definitely credit the creator who suggested this, and I'll put their name here on the screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt to cover the registration marks of my glossy paper with my matte sticker paper registration marks, because these pages are exactly the same, so in theory this should work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to very carefully pull the matte sticker paper off of the mat, and it looks like our stickers are going to come off as well. So this kind of works out because this piece of paper would normally be a scrap anyways, since we've already cut the stickers out. So we'll just carefully peel these off. Let me show you how I'm going to do this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I don't cut around the edges of my paper, because I'm gonna have to use the edges in order to line it up with the glossy piece of sticker paper. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna cut in from the edges like this. So that I have the entire registration mark intact, and then I can just line it up with the corners. I'm not even positive this will work. I'm just honestly kind of willing to try anything at this point because we've made so many different attempts. So now I'm gonna come down from the bottom and do the same thing. And I did not end up reprinting this sheet, by the way. Since it worked with the matte sticker paper, I haven't reprinted this sheet, but I certainly would if I needed to. So now I'm gonna take my Scotch tape once again, and I'm gonna secure these registration marks to the sheet, and hopefully they're gonna be perfectly in place with the originals so that my Cricut will cut them. So I'm going to make sure I don't put any tape over top of the actual stickers. So I might have to even put it on the edge here and kind of wrap it around. But I'm fine with doing that if we think this will work. So we'll start up here. And actually, I'm gonna cut this one a little bit more because I don't want to interfere with the offset around the design. So I'm just trying to get it as lined up with the paper as I'm able, because if the registration marks are off, of course, that could possibly mess up our cut as well. And it could mean that it's not going to do a good job of cutting our stickers out. So again, I'm going to cut around the offset to give it some extra space, but I also need to give it enough space so that as it reads the registration mark, it has something to read. And I also recognize that this is not the most practical because obviously every time you have problems printing, you don't want to have to print the sheet on an identical matte piece of paper, but I'm just trying to do whatever I can get to work. So even if it's not the most practical, we're gonna try it. And we'll give it some extra space like this. Now, everyone say a prayer as I put this back on the mat in the upper left-hand corner. I am gonna go back, whoops, I wanna make sure that's really well lined up. I am gonna go back into Cricut Design Space and go back to my original cut setting for this sticker paper, which is vinyl or premium vinyl, depending on what you have available to you on your machine, with less pressure. So let me go set that in Cricut Design Space, and then we'll insert this mat into the machine and see if it works. Dear Jesus, please let this work. In your name, amen. Okay. Let's see. Okay, this first registration mark has always been the most tricky. So let's see if it can get past it. Oh, it did! You guys! This is exciting! Okay, this is the exact same pattern that it followed when I did the last sheet. It went to these two corners twice. You guys, I think we're ready. Ah, it's gonna start cutting, yay! So let's see what these results look like by the time it's done. This is the first thing that's allowed us to even get to the cutting phase. So even if the cut setting is not the best, I'm super excited. Yay, you guys, okay. So let's go ahead and eject this mat and let's see how our stickers cut. Okay, so I'll just try peeling off this little coffee cup. Of course, maybe our cut setting wasn't the best, So after all of that, that's quite a bit of work. Yeah, and it does look like overall, probably because of the registration marks not being original to the paper, we didn't get the best cut setting here. But I think that that was more an issue of the cut setting that I chose, more so than the print then cut issue. Oh boy, well, this might not have helped us too much since we can't peel the paper off. Okay, well, let's try peeling off the sheet from the corner and see if we can poke them off from the back of the sheet. Well, so that's completely my fault for not choosing a very good cut setting, because you can barely see the cuts through the back of the sheet. You can kind of see the lines here. So again, that's a product of my problematic cut setting, not a product of print then cut. Ultimately, what was able to work is we used the registration marks from the matte piece of sticker paper to go over top the glossy, and that's what got it to read. So I'll be sure to credit the creator who gave that suggestion down, or at least the video that I saw, because there could be multiple, but the video that I saw down in the description below. And if you are having these problems, then that is ultimately the hack, I guess you could call it, that worked for me. But you can also use the rest of the suggestions in this video should you need them for your machine. And some of them are a little quicker and easier than the one we ended up doing. So maybe those other hacks will work for you. But maybe you should choose a better cut setting than I have, because this cut setting definitely didn't work very well, but at least we got it to cut. So thanks for going along on this journey with me. I know this video was a lot less refined than they normally are, but that's because I am literally troubleshooting this with you in real time. So just like everybody else, I have issues and problems, and sometimes I make a lot of mistakes along the way. I just usually make it pretty before I make it into a video, but since this was such a good learning opportunity, I figured we would dive right in. If you have any hacks that have worked for you to get print then cut to work that you did not see in this video, feel free to comment down below and tell everybody else, because I'm sure everybody else would love to hear it. See you guys in the next one.